Great, thanks you, Faye. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this seminar or webinar. I'm so glad that everybody is here. We're going to start, maybe. Hang on here. I just want to, there. Okay, first I'd just like to acknowledge McMaster's land agreement, or where we are actually located in Hamilton. So McMaster University stands on land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Wampum belts are beads bound onto strings which narrate the Haudenosaunee history, tradition, and laws. The Dish with One Spoon Wampum was created to bind the nations of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy to the great law of peace. The dish represents the shared land, while one spoon reinforces the idea of sharing and peace. Okay, so today we're going to talk about budgeting, and it's probably the most, the most topics that really students don't really like to come to. It's unfortunate because really it's probably the most important thing that you can do in terms of understanding how to make one, why you should make one, and it really would mean the more you use a spending plan or a budget, the more you have an ability to manage your money, and the more you manage the money, the less stress you have, and the more successful you'll be in terms of building your financial well-being. So today we are going to look at the preliminary steps to creating a budget, why you should make a budget, where do you start, what are the 5 steps you need to complete it. We're going to talk about the big expenses that are really impactful specifically, and we're going to talk about some solutions when the plan that you put forward, things just don't go well and you need some support. Where can you get it? What are they? Things that you can do if you run out of money or you're really worried about money. Okay, let me quickly talk to you about Max Money Center. I am Terry Bennett. Sorry, I didn't introduce myself. I am the money coach at Max Money Center, and we do a number of things at Max Money Center. Primarily, our goal is to educate and inform with the most accurate, up-to-date information we can about finances that are going on here in Canada. We have a website, money.mcmaster.ca. I think you, Faye, can put it in the chat for you. All the links that I'm mentioning, she can put into the chat. Our goal to provide this information to you is met in 2 ways. One, we have these workshops live often. Once you get here, we'll have live workshops. We also do webinars on all sorts of topics that are related to anything financial, banking, the credit, savings and investing, employment issues that you might be having, budgeting, obviously. So, anything that, has to do with money, we're here to help you. So the workshops, the webinars, you can meet with me individually. Sometimes the webinars are going to be pretty generic. They're going to be pretty wide open, not specific to your specific problem or concern. So if you have things that are very specific to you, not just information, please feel free to make an appointment with me. Again, how to reach me and money.mcmaster are going to be in the chat. And we have a website, like I said, that covers all these topics as well. So feel free to use whatever one will be helpful to you. I want to start this by just saying right now, this is a very difficult time, not just for students, but for almost every Canadian living here. Our inflation is very high right now. It's a very challenging time. Cost of living here is constantly changing. It's happening very rapidly. So sometimes what you may have heard and planned for, 4 or 5 months ago when you decided to come to McMaster, some of these, some of the expenses may have changed, and this isn't that it's wrong information out there. It's just that it is rapidly changing. Also, there are issues with currencies. And, when you guys come here from another country, you've got to get used to the Canadian currency in relation to your own currency. That can be very stressful. And I'll tell you the 2 biggest drains on your money are going to be rent and food. And so we will try to get to some tips around how you can deal with that. So you are not alone. We're all sort of, going through this together. Okay, so before you even need a, you make a budget, you really have to think about what you've been doing with your money, because how can you make a budget if you don't know what things cost and you don't know really how you are going to spend your money? So we say that there's two things that people have to do before they even think about putting something down on paper. We need you to be conscious about your money, which means you need to be aware of what you're doing with your money, and you need to be intentional, which means whatever you are doing, you've thought about it, you've made a plan about it, and you're following the plan. Okay, so let's just talk a little bit about how do you know if you're conscious about your money? It's a weird maybe concept. So I want to know things like, do you know how much money you have in all your different bank accounts, whether they be checking accounts or savings accounts? Do you know what your balances are in them? Do you know how much cash you have on hand? Have you thought about how much you spend on a regular basis on things like entertainment, or eating out, ordering in? What do you spend at a bar, at the movies, whatever? Sorry about that. Are you aware of what you can and cannot afford? Do you know what your sort of bottom line is? Do you know when you have a surplus, you have more money than you need, or are you already aware that you don't have enough? Those are the kinds of things that make you conscious about your money, the kinds of questions you should be asking yourself. And then there's the whole concept of being intentional. And when you're intentional, you have some sort of plan in your mind. And of course, it's okay. Lots of people keep their intentions about what they're going to do with money in their head. I recommend that you actually write it down, use an app. I'll talk about that when we get there, but there are lots of apps out there that can help you plan out your money on a monthly basis over maybe the semester and even over the academic year. How many people are actually thinking about having an emergency fund and are actually putting that expense, because savings is essentially still an expense. You've got to take money out of what you have and put it into an emergency fund. So when things go wrong, you've got a bit of a cushion there. And how many of you are really very aware of what are the short-term goals around my money? What are the long-term goals that I'm working towards? All very important things. Okay, so how can you be conscious and intentional about your spending? So you're getting all this, you're thinking about these questions, you're finding the answers to these things. So one of the things that if you know you're in a deficit or you just want to follow your plan, one of the most important things you need to do is be able to say no to yourself or to whoever's asking you. You need to be able to say, hey, I can't afford to do that right now. I always want to encourage people, the first thing they do when they make a budget is make a line on your budget that says savings, and you actually put the money into a savings account and get it out of the money you have, so that you committed yourself to having this account where there's extra money in it should there be a problem. Really, guys, don't dwell on all the things that right now you can't do. Think about the fact that you're here. Hopefully you're safe, you're fed, and be grateful for sort of what you have. Beware of the little expenses. You may not think, I'm not going to really count how much I spend on, grabbing a coffee or just doing something that isn't, buying little things, at the corner store, how much you might eat at McMaster, during the day. It doesn't add up. It does add up. And there's a great little motto or little saying that says, a small leak will sink a great ship. So watch those little things that you're not really putting into your budget because they add up. One of the biggest reasons that I see students getting into some sort of financial difficulty is they're really keen to do what everybody else is doing, keeping up with their friends. And there's a saying that in Canada that we say, never try to keep up with the, we always say, we're trying to keep up with the Joneses. In other words, we're trying to keep up with our friends. A big financial writer in Canada says, never try to keep up with the Joneses. Drag your friends down to your level. It's much cheaper. So just a funny little saying, except this is your reality with how much money you have right now, Remember that as a student, things might be tough financially, but they're tough for a short period of time in your life. You've got the rest of your life to get out and do all the things that you'd like to do. So just live in the moment now, guys. I'm a student. I have a tougher financial picture probably right now, but that's okay. It's time limited. It will get better. You need a budget, so please make one. You have to be disciplined when you're on a budget. You do have to follow the plan, but you can make the plan meet your needs. So not someone else's, what you think you should be doing with your money, but the things that really bring value to you. That's what you spend your money on. So it's easier to be disciplined when at least whatever money you have is going to the things that you value. And just be really smart about how you spend. Okay, why should you budget? Really quickly, if you were going someplace where you'd never been before or hadn't done it very often, most people will go on to an app that will help them get them there. They'll pull out a map. That's basically what a budget is. It's a roadmap to get from what it is that you're trying to accomplish with your money. It's simply a map. It's going to show you the way. It will, if you follow that plan, you will not overspend because you haven't made a budget where you're overspending. It'll help you set the things that are important to you. It'll help you set what's important, what's a priority for you. If you've got a goal specifically around finances, you're going to meet that goal because the plan is going to follow your goals. And if you're carrying any debt, you'll be able to put into this plan how you're going to reduce it, and that way you're going to be able to make that debt that you're carrying smaller. And you'll put in to your plan savings so that you've got a little bit of an emergency fund. All of these things that the budget can help you do will reduce the stress that you feel about money. And I just want to say that we've done all sorts of research with university, college students, and the number 2 stressor for students, first one is academics, the second one is finances. So let's try to reduce the stress in your life by making a plan. Okay, so we're going to start. What's the first thing that you might do? Well, the first thing that most people do is they start with numbers. They say, oh, I'm going to find out what things cost, and I'm going to find out how much money I have. What I would like to offer you is to say budgets first and foremost are based on your goals. And those things that you're trying to accomplish have to be based on things that you really value, just what I said. And we're going to look at the 5 ways we spend money. We're going to look at how much money we have, whether we're earning it or it's being given to us, but there's money that you're earning, money that you're spending, money that you're borrowing. If you're having loans. Sorry about that, guys. I'm turning off my phone. We also save and invest our money, and we also give money. We give to charity, maybe to family and friends. Some of us, that's a very big component of how we spend money. Okay, so here we go. We're going to try to make this budget. First and foremost, there are a number of apps that you can use. And I just want to point out that money.mcmaster.ca, under About Us, there's a resources and tools section. And in the tools section, there is a budget. And I suggest that maybe you just use that one. And if you're having trouble using it, by all means, come and see me and let me help you with it. We made it, it's just an Excel spreadsheet. We made it. It's very student oriented with the kinds of things that students typically spend their money on. It's geared to educational expenses. So that's a good one. There are many others, mint.com, youneedabudget.com. All of these are useful. Plus, when you open your bank account in Canada, a lot of the different financial institutions have an array of apps that are free to use by virtue of the fact that you have an account with that particular financial institution. So ask your financial institution, what kind of apps they have, or when you're choosing a bank, go online and look at their technology. Some of them have really, really great tools that will help you track your money and keep track of your spending. So take a look at all of those. Okay, so we said we're going to start with, what are you trying to achieve? What's the goal here? So just to give you an example, Are you trying to get by without having to work part-time? Are you going to try to take whatever money you have and make it stretch so that it doesn't necessitate you having to work? Another goal might be, I want to graduate with as little debt as possible. I am going to have to borrow. I may have to pay people back or student lines of credits or whatever, but I want to do it minimally. Another one is you might be wanting to take one of your years abroad and travel to another country to do a semester. Maybe you're saving for that global experience. Maybe you just are super stressed about money and you just got to know, do I have enough? And if you're doing a budget to find out, do I have enough? That's a really good thing, because if you have extra than you had more than you thought, you can reduce your stress. If you're really going to be short, now is the time in the beginning of the school year to get proactive. Start looking at other ways that you can bring income into your life right now so that you aren't behind, that you do have enough money to make it through. So these are all different ways of what is it that, you make a budget based on what you're trying to achieve. Okay, step number 2. Let's make sure that you're spending money. What are you spending your money on? And, there's all sorts of expenses that you're going to have that are all going to put demands on you. And some of these demands are things that are really necessary in your life. And some are really more about a wish. And that's really trying to figure out in your head, what is it that I really need? And what is it that I think I need, but really I can live without? Because sometimes student budgets are really not based too much on what you want, but they're really based on what you need. So be clear about needs are survival. Needs are basic expenses that you must have in order to live in safety and have enough to survive. Okay. One of the things that I have noticed with grad students particularly, I want to just highlight that a lot of the expenses, some of them your faculty advisors or your faculty itself may be able to help you pay for if they want you to go on a conference, if there's certain lab equipment that they're prepared to help you pay for. A lot of students pay for it out of their own money, and then they don't keep the receipts and give it back to their faculty advisors. They're ashamed to ask for the money. Please, if you are given permission, you've been approved to do something and they're helping you pay for it, make sure you keep the receipt and make sure you get the money back. Or better, if they'll give you the money, if the faculty advisor, whatever, will give you the money up front and say, here's the money, go buy it, please take the money so that you don't have to use your own money and wait for them to give you the money back, because that can screw up your budget too. So be really careful, mindful about anything that you can get from your funding through the university that you are getting. Okay, I know that that's a problem for students. Okay, so step 3, let's talk about your expenses. There are 2 kinds of expenses we see. One of them are the things that they're called fixed expenses. And they are things that you've maybe entered into a contract with. You've signed a lease for an apartment. You have a contract with your cell phone provider, with your internet provider. Those are fixed costs. They typically don't change very much throughout the year. They happen at the same time in the month. They're fixed costs. And then we have other costs that can change all through the month, depending on how much we have, what's going on in our life at the time. So I'm just going to go through and I'm going to highlight all the different kinds of expenses you need to be thinking about. So the fixed costs, rent. Sometimes when you rent in this country, there is an extra expense for the electricity and the heating costs. Sometimes it's all part of the rent. Make sure you figure that out. Do I have a rent expense that includes everything? Or do I have rent expense and then I have to still pay more stuff on top of it, this heat and hydro? It's called utilities. There's transportation costs. You've got to get around. You may have insurance to keep yourself, if there was a fire or someone stole from you. There's emergency money. that you're setting aside. That's a constant. Cell phone, internet, constant. And if you owe any money on a credit card and you have to make payments every month, that would be a constant. These are fixed expenses, okay? You know when they happen, you know what they are. Then there's the other ones we call variable or discretionary. They change. Things like how much do you spend on clothes, entertainment, gifts, groceries. Some weeks you won't have very much expenses for, just food. Sometimes you've run out of toilet paper and cleaning supplies, and then it becomes a much bigger expense that month. So it can change. That's a variable expense. Personal hygiene. If you take medication, hair shampoos, that kind of stuff, they all can vary. You'll buy that every single month, the same time every month. And you may have a gym membership that's discretionary. You can use the facilities at the university. A lot of them are free. But if you go to a gym, that's an expense that you've chosen on. So when you're working on your expenses, here's some. You want to look at the fixed expenses. Can you change them? You want to look at the discretionary expenses. Can they be modified somehow? But both sets of expenses should be looked at really carefully. And if you're not sure, I always say aim a little high. Better to have more of an expense when you're doing your budget. And I'll come back to that in a minute. Now, step 4. Now you're going to look at all the possible ways that you can make money, and you need to clarify that and make sure you know how much is coming in. It is very confusing for a lot of grad students how much they're actually making. How much is your stipend? Are you getting money from a TA or a research assistant? So make sure that you know how much money. Again, you can go to your faculty advisor, you can find out from them, you can find out from a lot of the faculties have their own payroll people on it. You can talk to them, their own sort of accounting departments. Make sure you know how much your stipend is, when it's coming, and how much is coming each time, so that you really know what money is coming in from your faculty. Are you getting a job? Do you have any idea how much that may pay you? How many hours you can devote to making that extra money? Is money coming from home? How much is coming from home? When is it coming? If you had money from home because you were able to save money from gifts from your own work before you got here, how are you bringing it here? Where are you going to put it? Really important that you open savings accounts for lump sum monies. If you're at the banking webinar I did last week, you'll know about that. If you don't, come see me. All of you as students, and you're here for longer than 6 months, so not exchange students, but anybody who is here for 6 months or longer is considered a resident of Canada for tax purposes, which means you can file your taxes, and there's up to well over $1,000 in free benefits that the government gives to people who are here for longer than 6 months because you're a student, because you have a low income, and the government tries to help you. But if you don't file these taxes, then you will not get these benefits. And $1,000, $1,200 in the scope of the year can make a big difference for you. So if you want to know more about taxes, I just want you to know that Max Money Center does taxes for free for our students. So just contact Max Money Center. And so that's what this means, is funding from Trillium or the GST tax rebates. That's all the kinds of benefits that you can get from the government. Okay. Now, once you've done the expenses, you've done the income, you'll be able to see on these apps, are you in a position where you have more money than you need, or you are in a position where, oh, I'm in a deficit, I do not have enough. Very important that you realize that things change very quickly, especially now. So because you do something in September, it doesn't mean you fill out this budget, you put it in a drawer, and you walk away from it. You need to be looking at this roadmap as you go along, like you would in any other kind of, as you progress, you have to keep looking at what you're doing, and are you on the right path? So I want you to know that budgets have to be continually looked at. And every time there's a major change, you weren't working, then you are, or you were working and then you lost your job, you need to go back to the budget and bring it up to date, revise it, and adjust it as necessary. You really do need to understand your financial situation. And because it can change all the time, that's why you continually have to look at it and keep it up to date. And we want you to build your financial muscle. We want you to increase your knowledge. So come out to our workshops and our webinars, see us individually, go on our website, look on other sources of information. You know, if you like to read, you know, newspapers, read the financial section and get a sense of what's going on in our country, and try to get an understanding of how you use money. We all have a relationship with money, and we have attitudes and beliefs about money, and we really need to know if some of those attitudes and beliefs we have about money, are they working for you? Do they make sense? Or do you need to sort of adjust how you're thinking about money? So all these things are part of getting this budget in place and you starting to use your money as effectively as possible. And the more you use it effectively, the more you're going to feel financially secure and stable, and it doesn't have to be a stressor. Okay, let's talk about some of these big expenses that happen in budgets. Again, one of the biggest expenses is going to be your accommodation. And you can see there's different ways you can be housed here. You can have a room in a student house. You can have a 1-bedroom apartment. That would be the most expensive way if you were alone in an apartment. There are private student residences that are near the university. And you can also just find a room in somebody's home, in a landlord's home. There are some of the prices for you to see. They vary directly. If you made a decision and you've already bought some, you know, already rented or made a commitment to a place and it's not working, it's stressing your budget, come and talk to us. Maybe we can, let's see what kind of contract you sign. Let's see if you can change. Can you bring in, if you're in over your head, can you bring in a roommate? We've got to look for ways to make this work because this is a big item in your budget, okay? One of the things that's sort of neat, again, if you file your taxes, if you rent and you have a low income, you can get a tax rebate. It's a benefit from the government and they help you pay. It's not a lot. It can only maybe be $30, $40 a month, but you can get money after your first year here and you file your taxes from the government to help offset your rent. Just a quick reminder, if you use cash, and there's no way to prove to the government when you file your taxes that you've actually paid this money, you'll never be able to get this rent benefit. So do think about that if somebody wants you to pay in cash. Otherwise, most landlords should be expecting checks, pre-authorized payments, electronic transfers. Do you want more information? Talk to me. Okay. Now, the next biggest expense is I talked about food. I know nobody really wants to spend their time shopping and making food, but really that's the cheapest way to do it. Try to make things. So if you're making a meal on a Saturday or Sunday when you maybe have a little bit more time, you know, you're going to make some, you know, some meat, make a whole bunch, freeze some of it, keep some out for now. But make always as much food as you can. If you have leftovers from supper, use it for lunch the next day and not have to not have to have lunch, buy lunch on campus. Okay, sorry. We have stores that are quite near the university. Both of them have 10% off on Tuesdays. Take advantage of this whenever you can. There's flyers that come, there's promotional little promotions that both these grocery stores give out. You can go online, find your grocery store and see what their flyer, what promotions they've got going on that particular week. Sometimes they're delivered actually to where you live on paper, but try to learn to buy on sale items. When you're buying fruits and vegetables, buy what's in season in Canada, because it's cheaper if you buy something that we grow locally than having to pay for something that you know, is coming from, you know, someplace else where it's warm. So try to buy stuff that is currently available and cheap. I spend my whole life looking at flyers, and I eat that week what's on sale. And they constantly changing. There's a great app called flip.com. Put it on your phone. It will tell you all the stores near you, what your item is. If you have a very expensive item, like let's say this is the week that you have to buy new laundry detergent, that's a big ticket item, will pull money away from maybe how much you have available for food. Go on to Flip and look what store has the best price right now. And there's another one, Cashback 51. It gives you cash back if you buy things that they're promoting on their website. So you'll buy it and then they'll give you money back for having bought it. So there's little tricks like that that can help you lower your food budget. There are also a lot of help on campus through McMaster Student Union and the Wellness Center, where there's a food bank here that will give you, you can go in and get food for free. There's just, there's just resources on campus. Look on our website, they'll delineate them all for you, or go on McMaster Student Union's website and look at the things they do for food. Lockers of Love. There's a number of different programs. So go on to these websites, Mac's websites, and find things, or come to us again. Numbeo, it's another one last app, numbeo.com. It's an excellent site to get information on all sorts of expenses that are going on in Hamilton. So you go on numbeo.com, you look up Hamilton, and it will give you information on housing costs, food costs, entertainment costs, eating at bars and restaurants. It's very specific. You can compare Hamilton with other areas as well. It might be a good, if you're trying to build a budget before you get here, you could use Numbeo for some of the Hamilton costs. Okay, one last thing, well, not last, but anyways, another thing, I'm talking about electricity. You'll notice that there are three different, these are a little grid you can look at. The way, if you are paying for electricity over and above your rent and you want to minimize that bill, make sure you're using electricity as often as you can on off-peak times. Mid-peak is the yellow, and on-peak, which would be the most expensive. So I try to do laundry. I try to, if I'm running, I don't know if any of you will have a dishwasher, but if there is one in your place, you want to run it on the weekends. It's always free. At nighttime, it's free. And then during the day, try to do it on the least expensive, on the mid-peak, as opposed to the on-peak time. Just little tricks to try to bring that cost down. And for low-income people, there are some government programs to help you pay for electricity and heat. Too much to tell you today. Come and see us, we'll tell you if you need that help. Again, transportation is another cost. Make sure that you realize that you're paying in your tuition, you are actually paying for a free bus, well, not free, but the pass. It's a bus pass that you get as part of your tuition to use Hamilton's bus service. So use the bus as much as you can. If you're going outside of Hamilton, you're living outside of Hamilton, or you're going to visit friends and family somewhere else, there's Presto cards. You can put money on these cards so you don't have to carry money with you, and you just use the card. It's almost like you can load it, and then as you take a trip, the budget, the amount of money on it, just goes down. It's just handy. There is the main buses run by, sort of their private, public sort of transportation. There's also something called shop.flixbus.com. It's on here. It has very discounted fares for in between cities. So it's actually cheaper than using what we typically refer to here as our GO system. Take a look at Flixbus and see the prices. If you are considering that you think Hamilton is too expensive for housing and you're going to look at some of the outlying areas, make sure when you're doing your budget that even though the rent is less money, if you're going to end up spending so much money on transportation costs to get you into Hamilton, that may not be it may not be cheaper overall to live in a cheaper area, because the transportation costs will be high. So check that out, the cost. And here's some other ones. We have rideshare. It connects drivers to passengers. So sometimes you can just get a ride with a fellow student and and help them pay for gas. There's Sobeys, there's bicycle rentals all over the city, right on McMaster's grounds. If you you can rent the bike for a certain amount of time, and it can get you places if you don't want to walk and you don't want to take a bus. So Sobe, it's called hamilton.socialbicycles.com. That's that link. And there's a link called Commune Auto. They have tons of cars. They rent them by hour, by the day, by the week. So let's say, let's say there's some really good sales and you want to go to a store that's sort of farther out. Some big discount stores in Hamilton called Walmart, or Price Club, Costco it's called actually, Costco. They're farther away, harder to get to on the bus, but maybe 3-4 students could get together, rent a car for 2 hours, split the cost, go to these cheaper places, buy for the whole month or something if you can, and then bring the car back. So there are ways to minimize costs, okay? So let's make a plan. You did your plan. It looked like right from the beginning you were going to have not enough money, or something goes wrong. What can go wrong? So many things can go wrong. You could have a job, and unfortunately, I hope not, that you could lose it, or you just can't stay at it and do the academics. So that money you just can't make. Sometimes your parents thought they could do something to help you, but they can't. We're seeing a lot of international students where there's some currency issues that are hurting their families in their home countries. So that's an issue. They want to help, but they just can't. Currency or just politics going on in the country can be problematic. If you're a permanent resident coming into Canada as a PR, you can apply for our government assistance for universities and colleges. OSAP it's called. Maybe you were expecting more than you got, and expenses could be higher. So things go wrong. 2/3 of students run out of money before the end of the semester. So we're trying to avoid this. We're trying to get you to look at it now so that that doesn't happen. It's much easier to help you at the beginning than it is at the end of a semester. So make this spending plan. Don't wait till you get into trouble. Do it now. Build an emergency fund into your spending plan. If your parents can help you, make sure you know how much, how often, to what degree, or if they can't. Consider part-time work. Look into the McMaster website. It's the registrar's office. They have an emergency loan program. If you get into trouble for food, rent, basic expenses, they can help you out. So it's under the registrar's office. And look for the McMaster Student Union. They, like I talked about already, they have resources. So make sure that, and again, if this is all too much information, just come to Max Money Center. Look into work-study programs. International students can get work in this country and can work on campus. You can come to us and we'll help you with it, or you can look at Max Money Center is part of the Student Success Center. We have on top of Max Money Center, they have a career program. So you can go to the career program and they can help you look at what jobs are available. They can help you with your resume. So they're really helpful. There are scholarships and bursaries that are part of McMaster University, and there are external scholarships. That means companies and individual people who want to give money to university students and they don't do it through the university, anybody in the whole country can apply for them. There are some for international students. Make sure you are looking into those internal and external scholarships. Make sure you have your student card. There's a lot of things at your student card. If you show it, you'll get a reduced rate when you go into sometimes bars and restaurants. Again, some of that information should be on our website. File your taxes. Even if you don't work in this country, it doesn't matter. As long as you're here for longer than 6 months and you're over 18, you can file taxes and get these free benefits. Make sure that you are keeping in touch with Max Money Center. And I just gave you really quickly just some ideas of, some little fun. There's all sorts of tips on the website. I just just picked a couple. If you want to look for cell phone and internet plans, go on to whistleout.ca. They will compare all cell phone and internet plans, and you can pick the one that makes the most sense for you. And it might not even be the cheaper one, but it may be the one that meets your needs better. But go on to Whistle Out. Make sure that when you've made a contract, let's say you sign up on a cell phone plan and halfway through it's just too expensive, maybe you can't get out of the contract with that particular provider, but you can change the maybe how much megabytes you have, or I don't know, I'm not into this, but you can change within your provider the plan and make the plan cheaper. So just because you said you were going to get this plan A, you can always change to plan B and C that's cheaper within the same plan. So constantly look at these fixed expenses. Can you change them too? One way to make sure that if you don't pay some of these bills on time, the person who you are paying this bill to, they can actually decide to charge you a fee because you were late, you missed the deadline when you were supposed to pay. Sometimes they add interest charges onto being a late payment. To avoid these payments, I suggest that you set up payments electronically through your bank. You tell them, I want my cell phone bill, I want my internet bill paid on this date, this month for this much money, or whatever the amount is. And the banks, because you've pre-authorized this payment, you've set it up ahead of time, the bank will go ahead and pay these on your behalf from the money that's in your account. And that way you'll never be late, you won't miss a payment, you won't get fees or interest charges, and it will make sure that you are building a good credit report in this country. Use coupons, check out these apps that I've given you to look for sales. Quit buying lunch and coffee every day, guys. I know it's a little amount and it's a treat, but don't do it every day. Maybe give yourself, I'm going to bring lunch to school twice and only do it 5 days a week or whatever, but you don't have to cut everything out completely. Just make sure that you're not doing it every single day. That might help give you little bits of money for food. And make sure that, there's nothing wrong with buying the store's brand as opposed to a brand that everybody knows. So, you can go into some of our grocery stores, like example, Food Basics, and they have their own brand is called Irresistibles. Half the time they are made by the actual main well-known brand. They make it cheaper. They stick on Irresistibles name, and it's cheaper half the time, or it's comparable. Maybe it's not the same, but it's comparable and it's cheaper. So look for store brands. And that's it. So I'm open to any questions that you may have. So ask me. I hope that wasn't too much information too fast.
That was a lot of information, but I think it was very great information. So thank you. Thank you for sharing this.
Okay.
Yeah, there's really a lot of information. I know our students are very, very engaged. So let us move on to the questions. So there were quite a few questions and we tried to address many of them in the background, just so we just given our time and our limitations. So during the question period, of course, I'll focus on the questions that are relevant to the presentation today. So for the first question, it's kind of general about tax. So the student asked, can you tell us about the benefits when we pay taxes? So maybe kind of just a clarification about how, taxes works, and as a student, what they're usually kind of looking for.
Okay, so taxes are, first of all, you only pay taxes in this country if you have income from work. So I often get a lot of questions from students that are getting money from overseas, from parents or from their own bank account that they're sending here. That money is your money. It's been taxed already in your home country, or if you don't have taxes, they aren't taxed at all. But so anything that you're bringing into Canada that is your own or your family's is not taxed. It's only if you work in this country. And you have to make about at least $15,000, $13,000 to $15,000 a year before you're even taxed here, because low income people are not taxed. That typically is a lot of students who, you're not really making that much money. So you're not actually paying taxes, but you are filing taxes, which I know must be sort of confusing for you. It's just a word. Like, when you file, you're basically saying to the Canadian government, hi, I'm here. Immigration does not talk to our taxation program, okay? So Revenue Canada, that's taxes in Canada. Revenue Canada does not talk to immigration. So you have a status from immigration that calls you a non-resident of Canada because you're just here as a student. However, for tax purposes, for the way the Revenue Canada government sees you, you are residents of Canada for tax purposes only. So don't get these two statuses mixed up. So when you are at a bank and they say to you, oh, are you a resident of Canada? Say, for tax purposes, yes. For banking, yes, you are a resident of Canada. And you file your taxes so the Canadian government knows you're here. And because you're letting them know that how much you've made, and most of you don't work or make very little money, you don't pay any taxes, but you get benefits because you have a low income. And these benefits are things like if you rent, they give you a little bit of money to offset your rent. Because Canada has taxes on almost everything you buy in the price. You'll see it at the cash register. You'll go and you'll buy certain foods and it'll be $4 and you'll get a 13% tax on top of that. So now you're paying, well, I'll say $1 and 13%, you're paying $1.13, and it's just what you pay. The government knows for low income people, that's hard to have to keep paying this 13% tax on everyday expenses. So again, low income, you get some money back to offset that tax. It's called the Trillium benefit, and it's also called the GST. We'll be running all sorts of workshops on how taxes in Canada work. So I'm trying to just tell you this fast. But all I'm trying to say to you is you get money back because you have a low income around food, around rent, around things that you buy. But if you don't tell Revenue Canada that you're here, then they don't know you exist and they can't give you any benefits. So you file taxes, we do it for you. It's super simple. Not to worry about it, okay? It's just come see us. We'll explain it all to you, okay?
Thank you, Terry. And I'd like to reinforce the message that tax season is in the spring. So after
Great.
you start to see snow, and we every year Max Money Center, so Terry's area does information sessions where she talks about tax like for an hour. So you're more than welcome to come to these sessions. It's not too late at that time to learn about taxes and just to learn about what you need to do to file taxes.
Yeah.
And international students with study permits are temporary residents of Canada. So you do need to file taxes for the time you're here.
Everybody who's literally here longer or will be here longer than 6 months and has a residence here, usually a bank account, you live here, and you're over 18 typically, you just can file. You just can. It doesn't matter what your immigration status is. You're just a resident of Canada for tax purposes. So, and we do it for free. We'll do all your, we do your taxes. We see thousands of students, and we can do it all year long. But none of you, because you're new to Canada, will be filing until 2024 on the fact that you're here in 2023. You won't be filing for the first time until spring, okay? So just keeping your eye out on Max Money Center or the Student Success Center websites, and you'll be seeing, it's tax time. You'll be hearing it everywhere.
And just to add, after you become a student, you'll also start getting our weekly newsletter from Graduate Studies, and we also share this information from Max Money Center there as well, so you know what is happening. Okay, the next question that I accidentally clicked off, so is about, let me just quickly find it again. Apologies for that. So it's about borrowing money from Canadian financial institutions. So the question is it advisable for international students to borrow money from Canadian financial institutions and if needed for any future moments of uncertainty?
Okay, so that's an excellent question, and that's an unfortunate. I have an unfortunate answer. Canadian banks typically do not want to lend money um, to students who are foreign students, because typically they don't. Now, one of the things that you can do sometimes is if you have a Canadian resident, like maybe a family member who is living here or a friend, they will sometimes can act as what we call a co-signer. So they take on the responsibility, as do you, to repay whatever you borrowed. But because you're an international student, they don't want to just deal with you because they don't know that you can't go home. And once you leave the country, they have no way of ever getting the money back that you borrowed from them. But if you get a Canadian citizen or PR that's here, and the bank says, oh, you sign on this contract with the student, and if the student doesn't pay, we're going to hold you responsible. The banks will often give the co-signer and you together the loan. If you can get a loan, of course it would be helpful if you're in trouble, but it's very hard to get a loan on your own without a Canadian citizen or PR signing for you for the loan. So what you're looking for when you're running out of money are scholarships and bursaries, and and working are your biggest ways to look for income in this country as a foreign student.
Thank you, Terry. So the next question, two questions actually, is about rental insurance. So first of all, is it a must? So do they must have rental insurance in Canada? And second, could you provide some insight about rental insurance in general? And if possible, any suggestions for providers?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of providers, just let me just get that off. There's a link. Maybe you could write it also, Yufei, into the chat. It's called ratehub.ca. It is a really good, actually, a really excellent website that compares all sorts of things: banks, savings accounts, insurances for house, for rent, for travel. It compares all the different entities, or a lot of the entities that actually will provide you with services, and they compare them. And one of the big areas that they look at is insurance. So you could go on to ratehub.ca, click on insurance, and then you find the insurance that you're looking for, whether it be house or car or travel, whatever insurance. If you're renting in this country, there is no law that says you must have house insurance. However, I'm a landlord, and lots of landlords are like me. They're going to ask for proof that you have insurance, because if you start a fire, even if it's by accident, but if something happens and there's a fire, and there's damage to the house, we're going to go to your insurance company to help get the money back. And so as a landlord, lots of landlords want to see students have insurance, because if there's a problem, they can go to your insurance company. Insurance for housing is very inexpensive. I suggest, so there's some places as a landlord, they're not going to ask you for it, but you may get landlords like me that'll be mandatory, but it's not a law. You don't have to. However, think about this. If you're living in a house with a whole bunch of roommates that you all don't even know each other, and yes, you can lock your door, but if someone were to steal your computer, to steal your phone, your laptop, any electronic equipment, think about what that would be like for you to try to replace it. If you can afford a very cheap rental insurance, and you have something stolen from you. And by the way, it's not just in your house. Even though it says house insurance, if you were at McMaster and you left for 2 minutes to go to the bathroom and someone took out of the library your laptop or something, that would be covered by your house insurance. So to me, it's a safe issue. Now, if you don't have enough money to even buy food, obviously, like you got to figure out what's the priority for you, but if you can afford it, just from a safety point of view, it's not a bad idea to have house insurance.
Thank you, Terry. So there were a few questions earlier too in the Q&A about utilities in general. So maybe students are coming from a country where utilities are, charged or considered differently than Canada. So could you kind of just clarify what utilities include? And so this particular question asks about the price of electricity in Canada, in Canada generally. But I
Yeah,
feel like we
it's
need to kind of
expensive.
further clarify the utilities before getting into electricity.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, the cost for electricity is a little bit more money than heat. So you have to heat your place because it's very cold here in the winter and you need heat. And then there's lights and working your computers and working your telephone, sorry, your TVs and all of those things. That's electricity. And like I said, some rentals will include all of it in there and it's just not an issue. But for those who don't, you will have an electricity bill and a heat bill. Heat is usually fairly inexpensive, especially if you're in an apartment building where, there's like you're not open to, like you're not alone with the wind and the snow, like you're just part of many, many different, housing all around you. It's generally not very expensive. I would say you might be able to maybe only $20, $25, maybe $30 a month. I don't know, but electricity varies. So that's why I gave you that chart in here so that you could see, try to use electricity in off-peak times because it can be, and it's so many cents per kilowatt hour. It's hard to really explain. But you do pay, by usage. So if you can manage the usage of electricity to do it when the time frames are really cheaper, that would help your bill come down. Electricity is typically in an apartment building, pretty not inexpensive, but not horrible, like gas, maybe $20, $30 a month. I don't keep up to date with it because people live in all different places, and so I see all different things. An individual apartment might be more money, it's bigger, maybe you're using it more things, maybe you got more things because you can afford to live in an apartment, so maybe you have more stuff using electricity. It's the lights. So when I leave my house, all lights are off. If I go away for the weekend and I have stuff, all my electronic stuff are on a power bar, I turn my power bar off. I unplug things from the wall socket when I'm not using it, because even though you're not using it, if it's plugged in, it still takes some electricity. So you just have to get into this mindset of like, how do I minimize my electrical use? Because the less you use, the smaller the bill.
Thank you, Terry. And you brought up a really great point because it really depends on where you live. Like if you're living in a house with, 5 other roommates sharing the cost, your
That's cheap.
expenses may be very different than if you have a one-bedroom apartment all by yourself.
Yeah. Because if it's, I mean, if the bill comes in at $50, let's say, and you're in an apartment, you're paying 50. If you're splitting it with 5 people, it's $10. So yeah, it's good to have roommates if you can find them. Okay.
So the next question is about food. Asking about, is there good quality food in food bank? So before you get into it, just to clarify, the food bank is a need-based organization. They're not a grocery store. So just want to clarify this.
Oh, that's a very
That's
important.
not clear. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So they would look, I guess, at what kind of income, what's happening with income and expenses, right? Faye, do they have to fill out actually an application?
It depends on the food bank. Yes.
Does it depend on the food bank?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's 2 kinds of food banks. I was talking about the one that actually is being run on campus. Yeah, the food is fine. I mean, a lot of people just, even other students who are in a position where they can bring their just food, and they bring it as a donation to the food bank. And then if someone needs it, they can go into the food bank and pull what you need. It's all stuff from grocery stores. They look at expiry dates. You're not eating things that are, that are going bad or anything like that. It's all good. And it's great for things like, toilet paper and Kleenex and cleaning supplies. I mean, they're all the same. So it doesn't matter. It's just that you can get it for free. And people do a lot of donations to these food banks. So there's one on campus. There's also all through the city of Hamilton, there are the City of Hamilton food banks, and you can just Google City of Hamilton food banks, just put it in your browser and it will come up. And there's food banks in every area of the city. And you're renting or you're living in this here, so you can use those community food banks. And again, people who are in a more just they're a little bit luckier and they have a little bit more money, lots of people do donate. And so you can use the city food banks and you can use McMaster's food banks. They're all healthy, fine. What other question was there related to food? Was there something else
I
besides
think
the
it's
food bank?
about just the quality of food. I think you already
Quality is fine.
yeah.
Yeah, the quality, it's the same as what you would buy in a store.
Yeah, I don't think the food bank will does check the everything that's getting donated, and if it's
Yep.
not safety, if it's not like safe for consumption, they would not be giving them out to anyone.
No, and they even have strict rules, because I know for a lot of people, like, even restaurants, some of them, who might give you like their day old breads and stuff, but that's those who's ever doing that are all checked out. They're all, under the public health department, they're fine. So yeah, she's absolutely right. Anything that you can get in the food bank is safe and fine.
Thank you, Terry. So moving on to the next question. So our students are really, graduate students, they plan ahead. So they're thinking about filing taxes. Are there things that they need to be mindful of to keep? So receipts or all the receipts they've received, what kind of receipts that they should keep
Yeah.
for tax filing
Yeah,
purposes?
good questions. Yes. So the stuff, remember I was telling you that there's this 13% tax on a lot of the things that you buy. That does not require any receipts. The government knows that everyone pays it, so it's sort of irrelevant. If your income is low enough, you'll automatically get these, those benefits automatically. However, one of the benefits that you do have to show receipts for is your rent. So that's why I was saying to you, if you're going to use cash to pay your rent, you won't be able to get the rent benefit, because there's no way that you could prove. You won't get a receipt from, well, generally you won't get a receipt from cash. That's why landlords take the cash, so that they don't have to tell the government they've made money from their renters. They're trying to avoid their own tax situation. But so if you pay, let's say you pay your landlord through an electronic bill payment through your bank, that the banks have these records, you'll always be able to so that can act as a receipt. If you have checks and you pay with a check, you get the checks back, or the bank keeps a record of the check. So again, the bank or your own check that they return to you will act as a receipt. So yeah, anything to do with rent, think about how you're paying, and as long as there's a way for you to retrieve that information, if you're asked for it, then that's fine. When you file for taxes, they don't ask you for any receipts up front. You just give them information and they believe you. And then about 20 to 30% of all people, of every filing they get in Canada, will maybe get audited. And they'll say, hey, you told us that you went to McMaster University and you paid tuition. Prove it to us. And then so you'll see when you go on to Mosaic, there's something called the T2202. Right before tax season, McMaster gives out all the receipts for tuition. If you got scholarships or bursaries, anything like that, McMaster makes it available to you before the deadline. They all these receipts have to be to you by the end of February, before tax season. So, you just go online and you print it out if you need to. McMaster has all the receipts. And let's say you're working for, let's say you're working for a company. They will also give you something called, at the end of the year, again, before the end of February, you'll get something called a T4. They'll be either electronically sending to you or mailing it to you by the end of February. You need to keep that to prove that you did in fact work and how much money you got paid by your employer. Let's see, also scholarships and bursaries, by the way, even though it is income coming in, the majority of scholarships and bursaries are not taxed. You have to tell the government that you got them, but they don't tax you. It's not included as income, so don't worry about that. And those are something called a T4A, and again, you find that on Mosaic. So again, you don't need it until You file next spring. I'm just trying to think. 90% of your receipts really are going to be coming from different places, and you just need to, when they get to you by the end of February, you just need to keep them. It's really the rent receipt that you have to physically make sure you're asking for and getting, if the landlord will give you one. Otherwise, you have to do, like, from the bank, the fact that you paid, you need to get receipts from them.
Thank you, Terry. And I do recognize we're like 10 minutes over time, the end of the event, but we do have about 4 questions left in the Q&A.
Okay, I'll try
Are
to
you
answer them
available?
quicker. Yep.
Perfect. So on the tax front, so this question, I know this is not our area, but just to kind of acknowledge it. So the student have had income for the first 3 months of the year, and they will pay tax on that. They are working part-time in Canada as well. So the student has identified themselves as being from India. So do they pay taxes in both countries? And
So
to
whatever,
clarify
yeah,
the question, they're from Canada, you're not a tax-paying citizen, you'll be a resident, like Terry mentioned earlier.
yeah. So if you made money in your home country, that has nothing to do with Canada. You may, and this, it's getting a little bit into the weeds here, but when you make money in and we go from January to December, okay, that's Canada's financial year, January 1 to December 31st. If in that time frame you were making money in your home country, you will, what you do with your home country, whatever, you need to tell them, that's up to you. But you will have to tell the Canadian government that you did make money. They're not going to tax you on it because it's already been dealt with in your home country, but they need to know how much you made before you came in this financial year. And then if you work in Canada, let's say from September to December, when you get here and you've got a part-time job through the fall, that you will, you'll get a T4 slip from your employer. You will have to tell the government, show them that you made money in Canada, and that has the potential to be taxed. But again, if you didn't even make $15,000 in Canada of income, you wouldn't be taxed. But you do have to tell them what your world income is for the year. That's what Canada says. They look at world income. So you'll tell them and not be taxed on what you made in India or wherever, and you'll have to tell them what you did make in Canada and see if you do owe any taxes on that money, just what you made here. Did that answer the question? Yeah.
Thank you, Terry. And just to clarify, we can support Max Money Center is happy to support with the Canadian tax system, but we're not really familiar with tax system foreign country. So if you do have questions about that aspect of your tax filing experience, check with your kind of your local, the foreign country's government if you do have experience in different countries for the year. So on a related question, can we ask Max Money Center for help to review their budget, just in case they're missing some details of a small hole that may sink our ship? So the student is obviously very engaged in presentation, Terry.
Good. Yeah, we're here to help you do, my favorite thing, personally, just my thing, is helping students with their budgets and doing projections as to the end of the semester and then the end of this academic year. How are you doing? Do you have enough? And we'll work away on it. And the money.mcmaster.ca budget I like to use, but I can, if you want to use something else and bring it with you to our meeting, that would be helpful. But yeah, that's my role, is to make sure that you're in a good financial situation, or as good as we can make it while you're here. Okay, so absolutely help you with making spending plans.
Thank you, Terry. There was a question about buying a car. So I've shared some resources from the Government of Ontario and other places. Is there any kind of tips that you have for students who are looking to buy a car?
I guess, well, buying a car, you'd have to get a loan. So I don't know, when you're coming here, are you getting a loan? If you are, like I said, I'm not so sure that will be easy to do. So you need to think about that. If it's coming from money from home and you're paying cash, that's a whole different thing. Shop around. yeah, used cars are generally cheaper than new cars. There's lots of information that says that the minute you drive a new car off the parking lot, you've already lost 20% of the car's value in what we call depreciation. The value just goes down. It's no longer new, even though you just all you did was drive it off the lot. So a lot of people try to find 1 or 2-year-old cars where you get a good car, a safe car, a car with lots of bells and whistles in terms of safety and stuff, because it's newer and you've got all the new technology, but you save some money by buying a secondhand car. Shopping around is always the most important. And you might want to consider whether leasing a car is an option rather than buying. And that's a whole, we have a whole, webinar on the differences between leasing and buying. You want to come and talk to me about that? Absolutely, book an appointment. There is no appointments yet in Oscar Plus. That's our booking system, but you can write me, Bennett, BENNET 3 at McMaster.ca and say, Terry, I'd like to talk to you about buying a car. Maybe I didn't even know you could lease a car. Can we talk about that? And then you and I can set up an appointment to meet and talk about that.
Thank you, Terry. And just a note that many of our new students don't have access to Oscar Plus yet at this stage.
Oh,
So if you
okay.
want
Well,
to
it's okay
contact
because it
Terry.
doesn't work right now for me anyway, so they
Perfect.
might as well. Yeah, we haven't got anything in our systems yet for Oscar Plus either. So either write money.mcmaster.ca or directly to me, Bennett3 at mcmaster.ca, and we'll try to accommodate you. And we can do Zoom calls before you even arrive here if you want to talk between now and when you get to here.
Perfect. Thank you, Terry. So for our last question of the day is a very general question that I will share a link that you said already mentioned in the presentation. So it's just about, how much do we need a month to live in Hamilton? I will share the Numbeo page that we've shared earlier about the cost of living in Hamilton. And note that Terry mentioned, depending on where you live, what your needs are, your cost of living may look very different. So
And it also depends on how you spend money. I mean, are you someone who's very frugal? Can you really just make your budget just based on needs, with just sort of more survival kinds of stuff? Versus, are you, is it really important to you? Or do you have enough money to party? Let's face it, you can spend a lot of money on eating out, restaurants, bars, very expensive here. Mind you, I don't know where you're coming from, so maybe it's not, but we see it as pretty expensive. So it's lifestyle. It's not just housing and food. It's the kind of lifestyle that you want. And that's why making a budget is so important sooner than later, because if your lifestyle is going to actually make you be short of money by the end of the semester, you need to make the changes now, not when you've already spent the money. So budgets range from, honestly, I see people living on practically nothing and people living on thousands of dollars a month. It really does depend on, the bottom line is how much money do you have and how much can you spend? And if you don't have a lot, you spend very little. I don't know. There is no common budget amount on a monthly basis that I've ever seen.
thank you, Terry, and that's really helpful. I think this is all for today. We've got all the questions answered. Thank you again for this very informative presentation. And Terry, do you want to also just kind of let students know what they can, what's available through Max Money Center, and what your role may be in supporting our students?
Yeah, just really quickly, guys, there's nothing really financial that we can't try to help you with. So savings accounts, investments, how do you get a credit card? How do you use a credit card? How do I build a good credit report, which is very important, especially if you want to stay in this country and become work here and be a PR. You want to have a good credit report because that can be very helpful going forward in terms of even immigration status. You don't want to have you don't want to get into debt. You don't want to not pay bills because that really hurts your creditability. So I'm just trying to think. There's lots of questions about employment and finances and how that works in this country. Taxes, obviously, big issue. So when you're thinking about a financial issue, think Max Money Center, think our website, think our webinars, think I need to see Terry individually. That's really all I can say about that.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And for all the students, after you arrive here in September, you'll see many more workshops and events with
Oh,
Terry at
yes.
Max Money Center. And we highly, highly encourage you to participate in those events. And they're all free to attend for students.
Yes. And when you see me, by the way, not only is it free, but it's totally confidential. It's private. It's between you and I. And only if there's other, things involved, like faculty advisors or something that you want some help with, then I would, but only if you said, Terry, get involved and be an advocate for me. So the whole Max Money Center, there's other staff as well. We really want to support you. We want to take away as much financial stress from your lives as possible so you can concentrate on your academics and other issues that come up. So make use of us, please. And it's wonderful that you came. Thank you very much for coming and listening.
Thank you, Terry. And I've shared our orientation events calendar in the chat. So all the students are encouraged to attend more of our events. And thank you again, Terry, for this informative presentation. And we'll see all the students after they arrive.
Good luck. Travel well. Okay.
Yeah,
Bye.
have a great rest of the day.
Bye.
Bye.